4 players on short-term injury reserve within a bevy of roster moves as Jaguar week begins. We'll talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LLB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd, become an everyday, or subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. How is everybody doing? We are full on in to Jaguars week. I will say this is a must-win game for the Cleveland Browns. The advantage they have, Coach Kevin Stefanski, 22-8 the following week after a loss. So if anybody knows how to get things right, Coach Stefanski has shown the ability to do that with his guys in his tenure here with the Cleveland Browns. Your top stories, the injuries, we knew there were a good amount of them. I think it was a little bit more than we all anticipated, honestly. But here we go. 4 players to short-term injured reserve. Mohmoud Diabate with a hip injury. Also linebacker Tony Fields with an ankle injury. If you remember, Tony Fields was banged up most of the summer. Just got right as summer ended. Unfortunately, will now miss minimum the next 4 games. Sad. The story remains the same, and it's terrible for a guy like Maurice Hurst. All the energy in the world, any team he's been with, they always speak about the type of guy he is. But his MO in the NFL is, unfortunately, he has been a guy that has suffered a ton of injuries. Ankle injury himself. He is also out for a minimum of the next 4 games. Tough blow for the Browns there. The one that I guess we didn't really maybe know about all so well, and probably coming off one of his best games as a Cleveland Browns Sunday against Cowboys, free safety Juan Thornhill, unfortunately, the calf. Again, if you remember, that's what cost him to miss a bulk of the time in 2023. Juan Thornhill also short-term IR. You're going to, a lot of people, and me, even question why the Browns kept 5 safeties. Well, McLeod most likely a starter now. Probably going to see more Ronnie Hickman. There's certainly some opportunity for D'Anthony Bell to get some reps. Subsequent moves with 4 guys going off the 53, coming back to the 53, wide receiver David Bell. So a quick almost 24 hours of David Bell completely off the Browns roster, back to the practice squad, back up to the 53. Cornerback Mike Ford came in late, certainly, obviously, as he did not make the Houston Texans, comes in late, has basically been the corner of those 3 veterans who has snatched that special teams gig. Mike Ford back to the 53, signed to the 53 wide linebacker we spoke a little bit about yesterday, Khaleke Hudson. This was interesting because you had Juwan Briggs, you had Sam Kamara. Which way were you going to go as far as elevating a defensive tackle to the 53? It will be Sam Kamara. Mike Hill, the latest, was supposed to have a hearing on the 12th. That hearing has been pushed back to the 19th. And I do believe there is no longer a restraining order in effect for Mike Hall. We will certainly hear more next week on the 19th as there is a pretrial hearing in regards to Mike Hall and his situation. Signed to the practice squad, defensive tackle Siaki Ika. Interesting, right? Tight end Jeff Swain. We're going to certainly talk some tight ends today. And linebacker Luigi Vion. And where do you see this guy? This guy is not built like a linebacker. He's almost 6'4", 250. This guy is built more like an edge. Big guy. He's had some time in the NFL, had some time at University of Michigan, transferred to Wake Forest to close out his career. Big dude. He goes to the practice squad. Browns most likely will be rostering only 5 linebackers Sunday against the Jaguars. Now, where all this falls in line, it's very unfortunate for the Browns to be hitting the injury circle this hard. We know Jack Conklin returned to practice yesterday, but again, with a limited designation. Until I see something more than limited for Jack Conklin, the expectation for him to play in an NFL game seems really difficult to fathom at this point in time. Jedrick Wills did not practice yesterday. That is another difficult scenario. The Browns elevated him They did. They elevated him back to the 53-man roster. But he hasn't done anything, hasn't practiced. So you wonder what exactly the elevation back to the active roster was for. Because right now he's just taking up a roster spot. And look, it's nothing against Jed, but if you can't perform, I don't know what exactly we're going to have you on the 53-man roster for. So certainly a difficult spot for the Browns to be in that capacity. Injuries yesterday, as far as in and out of practice. Your DNPers were certainly Jedrick Wills, as I mentioned. You also had a DNP for David Njoku, who will be out this weekend. Difficult pill for the Browns to swallow. We'll get to that later. Also, Miles Harden, a shin injury. Don't know when exactly this happened. He was inactive for week 1, but Miles Harden DNP yesterday. Limited for Bitonio. Limited for Conklin. Limited for Charlie Hewlett. Limited for Dalvin Tomlinson. Everybody, and limited as well for Alex Wright. Everybody else full. We will see how the way this works out for the rest of the week. But the Browns are in a very unfortunate situation. You really, really need that offensive line to get back intact. You really could use Jack Conklin this week. And even still, I think it just gives the team more inner confidence. It's not a knock on James Hudson. But it's okay to be a swing tackle in the NFL. But then when you are pressed into full-time duty, sometimes those warts show. The Browns could really use Jack Conklin. It would aid them in numerous ways. Obviously, in the run game, you would have a solid left side, Posick, Bitonio, Conklin. Browns need to find a way to run the ball. Last week, they threw the ball as much as they did. A lot of that was by need and score dictated and game dictated. They would rather have a closer balance than they certainly did last week. We'll monitor this as the week goes on, but getting Jack Conklin back would be absolutely vital for this franchise. Now, the linebackers, look, Tony Fields, Mohmoud Diabate, and Fields, you're probably going to feel this more on special teams than you're going to feel within the base D. Tony Fields did start in week 1. Didn't play a ton. You think that opens the door certainly for a Devin Bush or a Buke Watson to get some more reps, if not both of them to get some more reps with the base defense. But as we know with the Cleveland Browns, it is not about the base defense. They want to get to their nickel and dime sub packages as quickly as possible. This team is reliant upon man coverage and certainly against pass rush. For the Jaguars yesterday at practice, biggest one of note, and this actually changed, Tyson Campbell did not practice yesterday for the Jacksonville Jaguars after leaving week 1 with a hamstring injury. Well, fortunately for the Browns, this is one injury that does go in their favor. Tyson Campbell, as well for the Jaguars, has been put on short-term IR, meaning the Jaguars going to be a little hamstrung themselves at the cornerback position, looking like longtime veteran, former Florida State guy, former Philadelphia Eagle guy. He's been everywhere. Ronald Darby looking to be your cornerback 1 for the Jaguars on Sunday. We'll get to all that later in the week as we do our pregame, start going offense versus defense. But that is where we are at going into Thursday. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. You don't have David Njoku this week. The Browns only rostered 2 tight ends on their original 53, so you know where that number's at now. But we will continue to talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns rolls on. You've heard us talk for years about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use our FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday 9:15 pre-game moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday the 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On Browns continues. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I could not be more appreciative of everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Become a member of the Everyday Crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Of course, the show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Browns, we do not, well, with all the guys going to injured reserve, there was maybe one bright spot from all of that. David Njoku was not placed on short-term IR. What we do know to this point is David Njoku will not play Sunday in Jacksonville. And the one thing I did want to mention, I didn't get to, if anybody watched a lot of games this past weekend, are we not calling the hip drop tackle anymore? Because there were multiple instances of hip drop tackles. Certainly the one where David Njoku was injured, hip drop tackle. So I'm just curious, NFL, what's up with that? The whole thing was done to prevent injuries. You got guys getting injured, and the teams aren't even getting the benefit of the penalty being called while their players are being injured. Now, Ken Dorsey, and of course, look, some people need to learn how to manipulate press availability with coaches. Kind of asking Ken Dorsey, well, are you going to play more wide receivers? Nobody is going to give up what their game plan is. Ken Dorsey, as he would, spoke well of Jordan Akins. Of course he's going to speak well of Jordan Akins. That is the only tight end on the Browns' 53-man roster currently. And what we know about Jordan Akins is he's a somewhat decent second tight end receiving option. He's never been a good blocker in his career. Former minor league baseball player, transitioned back to football later in life. He can catch the ball. He can run some routes. But if you say that Jordan Akins is your number one tight end, that's certainly one where you're going to take a deep breath. It's not a knock on Jordan. People are what they are within their NFL careers. Certainly more than accomplished at what he does. But you can't just assume all of a sudden a guy like Jordan Akins is going to be able to give you more than you have ever seen from Jordan Akins in the past. So, one tight end on the roster. You signed veteran Jeff Swaim to your practice squad. I mentioned this on the previous episode. So Jeff comes in Wednesday morning, gets in a Wednesday practice, certainly Thursday, Friday. Is there enough for Jeff Swaim to do in essentially 48 hours as far as learning the playbook, assignments, system, and be ready to go and be brought up from the practice squad to contribute, probably mostly as a blocker, Sunday in Jacksonville? Maybe, maybe not. But this offense is somewhat new, obviously, to everyone. We don't know what the exact percentage is as far as what, the Browns have, taken out of the offense from the past four season and put it in for this season with new offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. So maybe Jeff Swaim is not that far behind the eight ball, but Jeff Swaim has had a decent career. I think it's almost 100 career receptions, something like 6, 7, 8 touchdowns in his career. So he has been a contributor at times in the NFL. Do you bring up one tight end at Jeff Swaim or Cameron Latou? Do you bring up two tight ends in Latou and Swaim? These are all options the Browns have. You're going to have an extra roster spot as you only have 5 linebackers right now. I doubt the Browns are going to bring up a practice squad linebacker for this game. So that puts you in that position. You are going to have, some of these guys that got added to the 53 might not dress as well. So that is another option. Miles Harden might not play, which means, certainly that Mike Ford can. The Browns have a lot of maneuvering going on right now within the roster. But tight end, and this is something that we talked about all spring. We talked about it in the summer. We talked about it during preseason games. And we certainly talked about it going into week 1 is, where are the Browns at with the tight end position? Is it that David Njoku is just that good and just that gifted, and they feel they cannot find somebody else to match that type of talent within their passing offense? Certainly makes sense. But now you're in a situation where you don't have David Njoku. So is tight end even really a factor right now for them? It's a really tough way to see things. The Jaguars have good linebacker play. Alawusu, Lloyd, good linebackers. So maybe this wouldn't have been the greatest matchup for David Njoku this week anyway. So maybe it doesn't truly affect the Browns' game planning. With the injuries and guys that they do not have at the cornerback position for Jacksonville, it kind of says wide receivers. Of course, we said that last week with a guy returning from ACL injury, and we also said it about a 5th-round rookie, and we know how that went. But you think that the Browns would be pushing towards getting Deshaun Watson and the wide receivers involved. It was not pretty, as we all know, Sunday. There was no cohesion to it. I mean, look, I know week 1, it's week 1. Not everything is supposed to look like you are in prime condition like you would be, weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, But it looked far, far removed. It kind of looked more like the first day of summer camp, training camp, than it more looked like a team that was ready for a regular season game. Now, certainly with your quarterback, Deshaun Watson, you are dealing with a lot right now. Dealing with some personal things, the loss of his father, the loss of his friend. Also, the pending allegations, and apparently now we're getting releases from lawyers on his side, lawyers on the other side. Apparently there's going to be an interview with the NFL from the victim side with witness testimony, with video. So, look, I do not want to talk about these things. As you guys know, I want to talk football, but there has to be some mention about what's going on with some of the off things legal-wise with some of your players. I would not be doing my job correctly if I did not bring those things up. So, if you get Jack Conklin back, you could maybe start using James Hudson as just a straight blocking tight end. Is it a tell if he comes onto the field and everybody in the building gets told ineligible, never go in eligible position? Yes, it's a tell, but you don't have much choice. Jordan Akins is not a great blocker. We don't know what we can expect for Swaim or Latu. And the Browns, it's imperative to get something going on the ground. This Jaguars defense is getting better. Missing the corners, certainly. Trayvon Walker, 2 sacks last week. Josh Hines-Allen, we all know, has been a good player for the Jacksonville Jaguars for quite some time. And if anybody doesn't remember, we were screaming to get in the Reek Armstead business. Well, the Reek Armstead eventually did it up in Jacksonville. So that is a very quality defensive tackle. That is 2 quality edge rushes. This Browns offensive line needs to make it up this week, step up big time. Will it be Jack Conklin? We don't know. And again, until I hear more than limited, it's really, really difficult to believe that Jack Conklin is going to be a player, a participating player Sunday, or maybe just a spectator. But I don't know what the plan would be as far as the tight end. Do you maybe start using Cedric Tillman on some more inside looks, playing some of that mini slot that David Njoku plays? He's got the size. Size measurements are not that difference between David Njoku and Cedric Tillman. This is one thing we've always talked about with Cedric. It's the one thing he brings to the wide receiver room that nobody else does. It is the size factor. Certainly something to think about. If you're asking Ken Dorsey in media availability to basically show you his hold card, he is not going to do that. Nor should he do that. Nor would he do that. He would be foolish. But watching how the Browns handle the tight end position this week is going to be paramount. Do they basically just exit out of the playbook, which would mean James Hudson plays a lot of inline and blocking? Do you use somebody else to do the receiving aspect? Do you bring up Swaim? Do you bring up Latu? Do you bring up one of each? Do you bring up both? It's going to be very interesting to monitor. The Cleveland Browns have got accustomed to good tight end play over the last few years with the likes of David Njoku. We know it was going to be a big drop-off if the Chief were to miss time. Well, we are here, and we are going to see how it all works for the Browns on Sunday, missing one of their top playmakers. We are going to get into some Jacksonville Jaguars. We are going to talk about that next as we continue your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody for sticking around. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Latest Locked On Browns continues. Browns, bunch of guys on the IR, bunch of guys called up from the practice squad, signed, some guys signed to the practice squad. It has been a myriad of moves between week 1 and week 2 for the Cleveland Browns. Not ideal. Good news is everybody goes to short-term IR. Maybe even better news, David Njoku, as far as we know, is not out the next 4 games, but we do know he is out Sunday for Jacksonville. Now, you look at the Jaguars, and it was a really, really difficult game as well for Jacksonville from a different aspect, certainly from the Browns this past Sunday. Jacksonville was about to go up late in the third quarter, 24-7. Travis Etienne had the ball knocked away. Miami recovers. And then all of a sudden, before you turned around, it was 17-7. Then Jason Sanders, 52 yards. And the Jaguars, who had a chance to start the season with a big-time statement road win in Miami, let the game slip away. Now they come to their home opener. They do not want to lose this game. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns tremendously need this game Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars after the difficult week 1 poor showing at home to the Cowboys. Jacksonville, Bigsby has started to become a little bit more part of the rushing game. This team that has been really heavy on Travis Etienne, and he's been really good as a combo back receiver / runner. Of course, has a long history with quarterback Trevor Lawrence, as the two of them were dominant at Clemson together. You look at this wide receiver group, a little bit different. You go out, you sign Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, a bigger wide receiver, a vertical wide receiver. There were times for the Buffalo Bills where Gabe Davis was just a game changer. Then there were also times where Gabe Davis was dropping the ball and very minute within their system. Rookie Brian Thomas Jr., kid looks like a playmaker. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it was 4 for 52. Drew, it was wide open on one that he was overthrown on. Drew a pass interference, did catch his first touchdown. These are bigger receivers, both north of 6'2". Matchup where CeeDee Lamb is probably licking his chops. Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, not the biggest or thickest of cornerbacks. These guys can play, but they have to be ready. This is a little bit different. These are some taller, more physical, both north of 215 pounds type of wide receivers. It's going to be an interesting matchup from that standpoint. I mentioned the Jaguars edge rushers. Josh Hines-Allen has been a very, very good player in his time in Jacksonville. Trayvon Walker, folks were getting nervous about Trayvon Walker and because of how high he was drafted. Well, 2 sacks last week. According to PFF, drew the most amount of double team assignments and anyone in the NFL last week. The other thing is he graded out really well as a run defender. So you see a guy with all the natural ability in the world starting to put it together, what we saw over the years as 95 came in as a really great rookie to becoming a guy that eventually became Defensive Player of the Year. So it's going to be not the easiest trip to Jacksonville. I highly think the Cleveland Browns want to get out of Cleveland as fast as possible. The stink of Sunday's loss, it's not just that, but here we are once again where we are probably having more things mentioned about the starting quarterback in terms of his off-field play as opposed to his on-field play. His on-field play Sunday wasn't that great, so we understand the way those remarks were going. But there were plenty of people just waiting for the opportunity for Deshaun Watson's story to go the wrong way, and those people are out, and they're certainly out in full force yet again. That best way to silence this, and we don't know what's going to come in the next couple of weeks as far as this continuing is, but Deshaun Watson needs to play better football. He knows it. The team knows it. Everybody knows it. To his credit, Ken Dorsey spoke well and said if anybody is capable of blocking all this outside noise out, it is Deshaun Watson himself. That's fine. But this has kind of been the thing here. When Deshaun first got here and then we didn't see him for 11 games, it was not how much and it's not even rust. Now, you're worried about so much time being missed for Deshaun. And look, I don't need him to get back to an elite level. You guys have heard me say this over and over again. But there needs to be some level of consistency with Deshaun Watson. We can't have the highs of highs and the lows of lows. You can't have a 14 for 14 second half comeback win in Baltimore. And it's okay you beat up on the Cardinals. It's okay you beat up on the Tennessee Titans last year. But it's got to be an even line, not your greatest highs, not your greatest lows. We know Sunday against the Cowboys was a low of low. There needs to be consistency within the quarterback position because if you're not getting it, guess what? If he's not completing passes early, most likely he's going to have to continue to throw passes all game long. So are you going to shoot yourself into getting hot, or are you just going to continue to fire the ball all over the field like we saw on Sunday? Balls over receivers' heads to the sidelines, slant patterns that were hitting guys in calves, hitting the dirt, so many things that were possible. It has been certainly a rough few days for Deshaun Watson. with what was going on in his personal life. Now, some more allegations possibly leading to some off-field stuff where attorneys are involved. Again, things we do not want to talk about. Deshaun Watson needs to go out there and play well. The Browns need him to play well. They need some consistency from their quarterback, which can make their overall offense start to flow. Jack Conklin comes back. Maybe we can add some running game. We'll see how this all goes, and certainly monitor the injuries, and we will monitor everything else related to Browns, Jaguars as the week goes on. Once you're done with this one, you can expect a crossover with Tony Wigg from Locked On Jaguars. Tone is a great guy, one of my favorite guys to do crossovers with. Just a great gentleman. Love to talk ball with him. So you will stick around this week. Lots to cover. The Browns desperately need a win, a must-win situation as they go down in Jacksonville to hopefully get a win against the Jaguars, right the ship at 1-1, come on home to get ready to face the New York Giants in week 3. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd is a bunch of filthy animals, but they are my filthy animals. I suggest you become a filthy animal. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel, and the show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.